See, client server architecture. This is client server architecture. See, SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio. It sends, using this tool, we use SQL Server Management Studio and we send a request to the SQL Server. Okay, SQL Server in the sense database server or engine. Okay, this is the server. Server in the sense where we install SQL Server, that is SQL Server, where we maintain the databases. Okay, so upon this operating system, we have a server and we install SQL Server. It is nothing but database engine. Okay, now here, what is this one? One more thing is components in SQL Server, client server. Components in SQL Server, what are they? Here, actually, client means client in the sense I told you we use SQL Server Management Studio. Okay, from there we send SQL queries. We send a request to the SQL Server. Okay, so it is SSMS through other applications also we can send request to the SQL Server. This is one component. And network protocol. Network protocol in the sense it is for establishing a connection between the client and server. We have a client, we have a server. How do we communicate from client to server? Okay, we need a network protocol now. So here network protocol is a component in SQL Server. Whenever it is enabled, actually by default, I will explain that pipeline. So that is enabled. So using that, it communicates with the server. Named pipes. Okay. Somehow my voice is not. I'm not feeling something comfortable. Okay. Anyhow, so it enables communication between the client and server. TCP/IP and named pipes. Okay. This is for establishing communication between client and server. Next one is SQL Server Engine. SQL Server Engine. Is this? Okay. Just wait a second. Let me have some water. Okay. So TCP/IP protocol, named pipes, and remaining protocols we will discuss that later. So it is enabled by default to establish a connection between client and server. And also the next one is SQL Server Engine. SQL Server Engine. What exactly it does is it receives a request from the tool, from the client application. It parses that query, command or query or request, whatever it may be. It parses that query. After parsing, it executes that query and it returns a result back to the client. That is SQL Server Engine. Okay. Now the next one is database. It stores data in tables. In which format? Rows and columns. Okay. And it also have services. This is another component. SQL Server Agent. This is one component. And also reporting services. This is another component. And also analysis services. This is another component. Okay. It has services also. SQL server has some services, and these are the components of SQL Server. Okay. Now see here what I told you. Server in the sense where exactly we install SQL Server, that is called a server machine. Okay. And inside this server we have two things: database and instance. You see here, database and instance. Okay. Now see, this database is created in hard disk and acts as a permanent storage. Database is created in hard disk and acts as a permanent storage. Okay. And instance is created in RAM and acts as a temporary storage. Okay, so inside SQL Server, it manages two things. First one is database, which is stored in hard disk, which is a permanent one, and instance of SQL Server, which is stored in RAM. This is temporary one. Okay, temporary storage. Okay, so after that we have client system. Client system in the sense where we install SQL Server Management Studio, that is called a client. In my system, I have server and also client tool. So in my server, I have server and client, so I can use this SQL Server Management Studio to communicate with the server, which is also in my system. Okay, so what is the use of client? To connect to the server through an application SQL Server Management Studio. Okay, and what is the use of it? It submits the request to the server. Okay, and what is the server does is it receives a request and it processes it and sends result back to the client, and client receives that response from the server. That is the advantage of having client application, okay, through which we can communicate with the server. Okay, so finally we have a client tool like user is there. In case of SQL Server, he uses SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio. He can communicate with the SQL Server and can operate on database. Okay, if you take Oracle, the user he uses SQL Plus. It's a client tool. He connects to Oracle, and he can work with the databases. And also in case of MySQL, user uses MySQL workbench. He connects to MySQL and operates on database. Okay, this is the way. Now, okay, that is good. Client and server, we understood. Now, in order to communicate with SQL Server, a language is needed, right? So a language is needed. So, and that language is called as structured query language, SQL. SQL. Okay. So, what is SQL? Structured query language. Here, the user communicate with the SQL Server by sending commands called queries, or commands or instructions. Okay, so the user uses SQL structured query language to communicate with the SQL Server. And also SQL Server is introduced by IBM, and the initial name of this language is SQL. SQL. Initially they named it as a SQL. Okay, later they renamed it as SQL. Okay, now we call it as SQL only, structured query language. And this SQL is common to all relational databases. It is a standard one. It is a standard one, and it is a common language for all the relational databases. Common query language for all the relational databases. Okay, SQL Server, it uses SQL. Oracle also same, it uses SQL. MySQL, it uses SQL. Postgre, and also every RDBMS uses SQL. It is a standard one. Okay, so finally, user, he uses SQL Server Management Studio. He uses SQL language to communicate with the SQL Server to work on databases. User, he uses SQL Plus as a client tool. He uses SQL language to communicate with the server Oracle, and he works on database. This is the way. Okay, now, but here we understood what is SQL now. Okay, now here it has some limitations. Actually, it has some limitations. Okay, actually, though it is a standard query language, it does not have full programming capabilities. Like, we cannot write loops like a programming language. Okay, we cannot write conditional statements. We cannot create functions using SQL. Okay, so Microsoft has designed a separate tool, or it may be an extension to SQL. So they named it as a TSQL, Transact SQL. SQL. It is an extension to SQL. Microsoft has designed. Okay, so here This also we will learn as part of the course. TSQL includes all standard SQL commands. Along with that, it also includes the following. What it includes is procedural programming, built-in functions, error handling. It can handle errors, and also we can create local variables. Control of flow will be there, and system functions we create. System functions are also there. So, and also we can create stored procedures, triggers, and user defined functions we create. Okay, using TSQL. We will learn SQL and also transact SQL, TSQL. Both the things we will learn. Okay. Now come back to SQL. Now, what I said, in SQL we write queries. Using SQL we write queries or commands. Okay. Based on the operations we perform over a database in SQL Server, these SQL commands are categorized into five types. Five types. What is the first one? Data definition language, data definition language, and a data manipulation language, data query language, and the fourth one is a transaction control language. Fifth one is a data control language. Data control language. Okay. Now you see, under this data definition language, these are the commands we get under this data definition language. What are they? Create command we have, alter command we have, drop command we have, truncate command we have under this data definition language. Okay, we have five types. Five types of commands are there. Next one, you see data manipulation language. Data manipulation language. Okay, insert command, update command, delete command, merge command. This comes under DML. DQL has only one command, and that is select command. Okay, and also TCL, transaction control language. Transaction control language. It has three commands: commit, rollback, save transaction. This save transaction is nothing but a partial rollback. We call it as a partial rollback that we will see in transaction class. Okay, we have a session for it. Okay, now data control language. It has two commands: grant and revoke. Okay, so these are the commands we have in SQL. Five types are there. Okay, and all these commands are not case sensitive. Okay, if you want you can use uppercase, if you want you can use lowercase also. They are not case sensitive. Okay, so practically we will see everything here. And also let us see the SQL server installation part now. SQL server installation. Let me execute, open that document where it is. SQL server installation. Wait a second. Just 1 second. Let me open. Yes, got it. See here. SQL Server 2022 installation. How to install SQL Server. Now, even you type it in Google install, not Visual Studio, install SQL Server 2022. Go to this link. This is the link. Okay, you see here in this page, you have to click on download now here, SQL Server 2022 developer version. We are going to install developer version. Okay, click on that. See here, it has downloaded. Okay, you have to execute this file. Let me execute that one. I will not install here because I have in SQL Server installed in my system. Just I will show you that. Yeah. Okay. Select basic. Okay. And click on accept. Okay. You have to click on install. You have to click on install. Okay. Now see here, you have to select developer version. Okay. So whenever you come to this page, this wizard, you have to click on install. Okay. In the next wizard, you get like this. Left side, you have to select installation. Left side, you have to select installation. Okay. Right side, you have to click on new SQL Server standalone installation. This is the first link. Okay. After clicking that, you will see another wizard like this. Okay. So anyhow, we downloaded developer version. It shows developer only. Click on next button. So after clicking next, again next, okay, it shows you like this. Even though it shows warning, no need to worry about that. Okay, try to install. Click on next. Okay, it shows firewall settings also. Next, in another wizard, it shows Azure extension for SQL Server. Okay, Azure extension. If you don't have Azure account, just leave it. Don't select Azure extension, just leave it. Okay, click on next. Click on next. If you have Azure account, you have to give Azure account details here. You have to click on next. Next. So here you have to select, click on select all and click on next. It asks you, actually it shows default instance. It shows you default instance. In my case, I have old version also. That's why it has shown me named instance. If you have any older versions, suppose if you want to install newer version, so it shows you named instance. You have to give the name. So you have to give the name, and with that name only it opens SQL Server 2022. That is named instance. Okay. Or else if it is first time installation, it shows default instance. Okay, you have to click on next button. Done. Next. So here two modes it is showing: database engine configuration. Under this database engine configuration, Windows authentication mode is available, and also mixed mode authentication is also available. Okay, Windows authentication in the sense, those who are authenticated users of the Windows operating system can log into SQL Server. Mixed mode in the sense, SQL Server has a authentication, separate authentication, and it also uses Windows authentication. Both it will work. Okay, suppose you select a mixed mode, then you have to give password, only password, because it by default SQL Server system administrator SA account will be there. Internally it creates that. SQL Server system administrator SA is the account name, and you have to give only the password when you select mixed mode. Okay, and click on next button. Next. Okay, so it installs SQL Server. It shows like this once it is done. Okay, so with this we completed only installation of SQL Server. That means we did not install client tool. Okay, we installed only SQL Server. So after installing SQL Server, you have to install SQL Server Management Studio also. That is the client tool with which we can communicate with SQL Server. Okay, so for that you need to go to this link and try to download SQL Server Management Studio SSMS 21. Okay, or else if you get any latest version, you will get that link here. You have to click on that. So once it is downloaded, try to install that. That means we have installed SQL Server. Now we are installing SQL Server Management Studio. That means client tool. Okay, both are there in our system. In our system. Okay, so we communicate with the SQL Server using SQL Server Management Studio, and this is the SQL Server Management Studio. This is the one. Okay, so this is the way how to install SQL Server. This document, if you want, I can share with you. Let me close this one. Okay, come back to our this one. Okay, this is the way how to install SQL Server. Okay, now the next part is SQL Server Configuration Manager. configuration. Why do we need configuration? Because we have SQL Server and also SQL Server Management Studio. We have to communicate with SQL Server. For that we need client tool. So in order to communicate with SQL Server, we have to configure the manager. Okay, by default it is configured only. No need to worry about that. But if you face any issues, then you have to check this configuration manager. Okay, let me open that one. SQL Server. This is the configuration manager. Okay, right. See here, after opening this SQL Server configuration manager, see here, under this network configuration, it is showing all the protocols here. Okay, this is the one, SQL Server 2022. It is the one. When you click on this, in the right side you see shared memory. By default, it is enabled. Okay, named pipes. Okay, and also TCP IP. It is disabled, and named pipes is also disabled. Okay, shared memory is enabled. Okay, what is the difference between these three protocols? Now we are going to see. Okay, what is shared memory? This is the first one. Okay, it is the simplest and fastest SQL Server communication protocol. Simplest and fastest. Why? Because it allows only local connections only. It is there in our system. Okay, because SQL Server is there in our system, and also SQL Management Studio is also there in my system. So local connections, it supports local connection. That's why it is shared memory. Client and server must be on the same machine, then only it works. Shared memory works when client and server machine must be on the same machine. Okay, and it uses Windows shared memory, RAM, for communication between SQL Server and client application. Okay, the next one is named pipes. See, named pipes we have. It is for inter-process communication, local or intranet connections. Intranet and local connections. That means local, that means both the things are in our local system only. And intranet connection, local area network. Okay, it uses shared memory method between applications on the same machine or local area network. In that case, we use named pipes. Okay, now the third one is TCP IP also. Transmission Control Protocol. It is Internet Protocol. TCP IP is the standard communication protocol for most networked systems. Okay, it includes Internet and LAN also. It supports LAN, local area network, and also Internet. Suppose our server system, it is in a remote location, and the tool SSMS is in my laptop. Okay, so I can connect from my tool, from my laptop to the actual server using TCP IP protocol. In that case, we use TCP IP, Internet Protocol. We have to give IP address to communicate with the server. Okay, that means it supports remote connections over networks or the internet. Okay, this is about TCP IP and named pipes. This is for local or LAN, shared memory. Okay, that means SQL Server and client tool will be in the same machine. In that case, we use shared memory. Okay, now how to connect to SQL Server? Okay, to connect to SQL Server, open SSMS and wait. Enter the following details. Okay, to connect to SQL Server, open SSMS. Okay, let me close all these things. No, don't say. Okay, disconnect. When you try to connect to SQL Server, see, it is asking few details here. Server name, anyhow, it is showing server name in the sense system name, our machine name. Okay, authentication, SQL Server authentication, Windows authentication, Microsoft Entra password, Microsoft integrated Entra MFA, managed identity, service principal, default, everything we will see one by one. Okay, and username we have to enter, password we have to enter, and these are the encryption related details here. Encryption, this also we will see, whether it is mandatory, optional, strict, color, everything we will see one by one. Okay, so after giving the all the details here, okay, we can connect to SQL server. Okay, let me open this one here. Server name in the sense, first one what I said, computer name in the sense our server name only. Okay, authentication, we have two things here. First two, you see, SQL Server authentication, Windows authentication, SQL Server authentication. Okay, first just see these two things. Okay, so here Windows authentication for single user, because SQL Server and client tool are there in my system only. I am only the person using my system, right? So those who are authenticated users of Windows operating system can use SQL Server. That is for single user only. In that case, we use Windows authentication. SQL Server authentication, I told you mixed mode na. So that means SQL Server also has a authentication, and also it uses Windows authentication when you select mixed mode while installing SQL Server. Okay, that means it uses multiple users. Okay, that what is the use? Multiple developers can work on same machine, same server machine. Okay, through their client systems. Okay, that is SQL Server authentication mode. This is for multiple users, whereas this is for single user. Windows authentication means. Okay, the next one is Microsoft Entra. Microsoft Entra. Okay, these things are related to Azure. I will explain these things in the next class. Okay, and then we will log in into the SQL Server. We will create the database. Okay, what happens when we create a database exactly? Okay, how to different ways of creating databases. All those things we will see in the next class. Okay, so I'm closing now this session. Actually, I'm not feeling well, but I want to conduct the demo session. Okay, so tomorrow we will continue this. Any doubts? Any doubts, Sachin? Sachin, any doubts? Okay, if you don't have any doubts, then we can close the session and we can continue this tomorrow. Okay, right.